Welcome to the Aquest Podcast, conversations about regs, funds, and governance with your host, Daniel Lawlor.
Hello, podcast listeners. Welcome to this episode of the Aquest Podcast. I hope we find you all safe and well, emerging from hibernation and straight into staycation. For this episode, Shannon's going to take the hot seat, and we're going to have a conversation about all of the things going on in the Aquest world this week. So we've had a chat with Martina Kelly, which is one of our latest podcasts. We've produced a mock Dear CEO letter, which is my anticipation of what the regulator will say as it concludes the CP86 thematic inspection. There's also work with Sam Glynn on cyber, RegTech for 6-year-olds, and WWRD episodes on Wirecard and the RSA Ireland insurance fine that was issued recently. So sit back, relax, enjoy Shannon's hosting of this episode. If you are new to the podcast, do hit subscribe. It's available through all of the podcast channels, and you'll be able to keep up to date with our latest content there. Okay, sit back, enjoy, get on with the show.
So first of all, Danny, I want to wish you a very happy birthday.
Is that your intro, Shannon?
Danny, my intro is following my
You beat me
happy birthday salutations.
Oh, you're going to have to work on it. You have to work on your intro.
Was the Rialka good? Would
The
you
Rialka
prefer
was
whiskey?
nice. No, I'm a wine guy. I'll do. Wine guy will do. Yeah, absolutely. No, very nice. Wonderful birthday this week. Don't want to dwell on it too much. It's only a number.
It's only a number.
Yeah.
We have been ships passing in the night for the last week or two. And this is 20 minutes to catch up and talk to you about what's been going on last week and this week. There's so much, I'm not sure we'll even get to it all. And if we do, then maybe there's a few minutes to talk about what's coming next week. So does that suit you?
It does. The joys of this sector are that the regulator just keeps on giving. Keeps on giving and giving. So there's so much to cover in content and
elaborate.
Create. Well, so this week, where do you want to start? WWRD?
Well, there was 2 of them, wasn't there?
Yeah, so we recorded 2 WWRDs this week. What would the regulator do? That's a little YouTube video series that we run. And in one of those videos, we talked about the Wirecard scandal. What would the regulator do if it was presented with a situation like one of its regulated firms has fallen over, and next thing you at the European Commission is asking that your regulatory agency be reviewed by ESMA. That's a pretty nasty position to be in. So we did a video about that. It's a tricky one, though. I think it's easy to rush to judgment on things like this and assume, for example, that the regulator hasn't been up to scratch. But I'd hold judgment. I'm going to defend my regulator community, my ex-colleagues, not here necessarily, but just generally. Because if you get into the ins and outs, say, of Wirecard, only one part of that business was regulated, and the regulated part isn't the one that's had the issue. And so now you find commentators will say things like, well, BaFin should have been looking to see what HQ was up to in Wirecard. But that's not really that's not their job. It's like saying if Google had a part of their organization that was a regulated firm doing payments or something like that, should the SEC be responsible for supervising everything that Google does across the organization? No. So I wouldn't assume that the German regulator has done a bad job on this. Wait and see what comes out of that. But that was a very interesting WWRD.
And your other WWRD on sanctioning individuals.
Yeah.
Give me 30 seconds on what that was like.
I tell you what, that's an interesting one, because it was based on the sanction that was imposed on an individual who had been in a senior position in RSA Insurance Ireland and was sanctioned for being involved in the firm misstating its capital requirements. And so it was sanctioned very heavily, fined 100 grand reduced to 70 grand, banned for 12 years reduced to 8 years. So I was interested to kind of get into the mindset of that. As more obligations and responsibility is placed on senior leadership in regulated firms, and as the regulatory regime tightens and makes it easier for regulators to pursue individuals, it just really focuses the minds of anybody in those positions to make sure they get it right. Now, I know we're going to do a podcast soon.
Yes.
Following up on this, because I'm interested in what is the human behavioral element behind an individual, not necessarily in this case, but just generally making decisions, poor decisions, that might benefit the company in the short term, but can be very harmful for an individual and for the company, but particularly the individual, are very personal consequences.
Yeah.
I'm interested in your take as a human behavior expert.
Well, the spoiler alert.
No, don't spoil, just...
Well, everyone's going to know this answer. Humans, first of all, are really predictable. So it's going to be a carrot or a stick 99% of the time. That's a spoiler alert. And I'll leave it there. But you and I already know that. The audience knows that. But I do look forward to exploring that human behavior and why do people do what they do, particularly in the workforce. You had, actually, we had a great conversation with Martina Kelly.
Yes, Martina Kelly.
We've been waiting for Martina for how long? 6 months? We didn't want to...
Well, I would have had her on a podcast about 2 years ago, but she was still in the central bank and in the midst of policy expertise. So I guess fair enough.
It was a great conversation.
It was great to have her on. So she retired from the central bank at the end of 2019. She's now head of funds in the Institute of Banking. And it was great to catch up.
Yeah.
Great to reminisce. She had a career in the central bank that goes back to the early days of the funds industry here. And I just thought it was very interesting to find out what it was like when somebody rocks into the office and says, I had a great idea. Why don't we create, all those derelict buildings down along the Liffey and all this mass unemployment that we have and the way we could do it more, tax bucks in the exchequer. Why don't we set up a funds industry and a financial services industry? Because that must have come a little bit out of left field. So very interested to know Martina's take on it and understand some of the history.
Yeah, it was good.
It was
really
fun.
good.
Yeah, it was great to catch up.
And reg tech for 6-year-olds. First of all, I have heard from at least half a dozen people that your little one is like a cherub baby.
Well, he gets his looks from his mother.
Well, clearly. Clearly.
Yeah.
So reg tech for 6-year-olds, great intro, great setup. It's official. It's coming out in July.
Yep. First episode is recorded.
Yeah.
Delighted to have Joanne Horgan, who's the Chief Innovation Officer, Advisor Software, a soup tech firm.
Love it. I saw the recording. I know it's not out yet, but I watched it and she's great.
She's cool. Yeah,
Loved
she's
it.
Cool. And soup tech is another name to put, another acronym to put
Which
into
stands for?
Supervisory technology. It's technology used by supervisory organizations like Central Bank of Ireland or the FSA or whoever, the FCA even. So
what is reg tech for 6-year-olds? What's the intention?
I tell you what it is. It is conversations at the intersection between regulation and technology. So trying to draw it out and just explain what it is that reg tech does, how it helps, how it solves problems, but for non-techies, because I'm not a techie. I understand enough about it to kind of navigate, but I don't know how you code a reg tech solution. But I do know that there's some awfully interesting stuff going on. And I do know that if a firm has a problem or a pain today, throwing people at it is not the right solution. No way. It's got to be a tech
Or
solution.
as Brian said, over at Raytag, people are spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Because if you have 1,000 spreadsheets talking to each other to do something in your organization, you're just asking for an invitation to step up.
Well, it's an opportunity for human error.
Yeah.
And it is also costly in terms of delivery and in terms of trying to keep people trained up and stuff.
And yet change is typically so disruptive in the beginning, because if you've been operating with 1,000+ spreadsheets for the last 10 years, and myself included, and now you want me to leave what I've known to work and all the ins and outs of it, that it's unconsciously genius level completed for me, to now embrace a technology, as you say, you know enough to navigate it, but what would it take for you to learn enough about it so that it could start operating within your business to solving problems that humans have done for the last X number of years? It's
well,
really
I'm going to let you do a secret, Shannon.
Go on.
The financial services industry
is
not very proactive when it comes to change.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, sit down, right? It's not very, it tends, because it's such a heavily regulated industry, it tends to be quite reactive because you're always trying to catch up with whatever
Reactive
the latest.
When a gun is pointed at your head.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas if you take our tech buddies right? They're generally not working in regulated firms. They're generally much freer to create and implement and do. So they see problems and they're immediately on track to go out and solve them. Whereas for a regulated firm, you're kind of always trying to catch up with what your latest regulatory development is. And it's that bit harder then to look forward and say, what's the tech solution here? What's the easiest way to reconcile?
And what's the right time and place and budget to allocate to an initial disruption before I get to see and experience the benefit? I totally get it. Totally get it.
But the flip side is, the rule books are not getting smaller. They're only expanding and expanding. And the regulator isn't really going to give you leeway just because the rule book is 1,000 pages long. If there's a rule in there you're supposed to comply with, there's a rule in there you're supposed to comply with. In fact, you've missed it because it's buried amongst thousands of pages. It's not good enough. Because there's tech solutions out there that will help you to get your compliance and your risk in place. That
You've got a tech solution on rulebooks.
We do indeed.
Intelligently linked up rulebooks.
The press link rulebooks, which does that. It solves the problem of very fragmented rulebooks. You're trying to work through level 1 regulations, level 2. Central bank question and answers, ESMA questions and answers, guidance opinions, and it brings it all together so that it's much more manageable and easier to navigate.
I saw the note about going from 10 hours down to 1 hour, which is just a good business and efficient. And I can imagine if I was the one having to do all the research, my eyes would be rolling and I'd be huffing and puffing.
Anything to help people get to the answer quicker and get to the right answer. It makes sense.
You have been hanging out with a cyber chap a lot in the last couple of weeks, Sam Glynn over at Code Emotion. What is going on?
Oh God, I don't know if I feel better or worse hanging out with Sam, because he'll tell you the war stories about firms that get pinged with, they get hijacked or held to ransom by cyber hackers and what have you. And it's pretty scary stuff.
First time I heard about sextortion was in a conversation with Sam. I've been schooled. And the other thing that I picked up was emails, malicious emails and naive employees. Or I can't remember the percentage he added, but maybe 90% of why.
He's an interesting guy.
The fit hits the shan.
Yeah, Sam is a great guy. He's tons of experience in cybersecurity, but it's cybersecurity for regulated firms. And so it's nice working with him because I kind of look at it from, what would the regulator think about this? How would they approach? What kind of questions would they have for the firm? If you're the firm, how do you need to interact and manage that relationship? And Sam knows and understands that, but then obviously he comes from more of a tech side as well. But the Cyber in 7 series is great just for getting under the hood of some of these issues. We did 2 this week, 2 episodes we recorded. One of them was about who's on your speed dial for when you hit a cybersecurity incident. So you log on and find the system is down and you've been held to ransom for $1 million Bitcoin or whatever it is. What's the plan? And at that stage, it's too late really to, let me put it another way. You don't want to start thinking at that stage about, oh God, who does cybersecurity? Who do I call? At that point, you want to be hitting the button, hitting the emergency, lifting the back phone, and you want to be ringing your top 6 professionals to kick into action the plan that you hope you'd never have to use, but at least it's there. Yeah. So that's good.
And what was the other one?
The other one was interesting as well. It was about buy-in from HQ. So sometimes you will find where you are, for example, the Irish business in an international group, that it can be hard to get the resources or commitment,
of course,
locally for a cybersecurity project. I see this in other areas as well, but in this it was about cybersecurity. And so how you manage that relationship with HQ and from both the HQ and the local perspective to make sure that you're on the same page and you're getting supported where you need to get supported. It's an issue that comes up again and again, not just in cyber. I think the key relationships for the Irish business are always the regulator and HQ, because they're the two that can make your life very difficult or a lot easier if they're well managed.
Yeah, fair play. What else were you up to this week?
Well,
CP86.
CP86. It will not go away. So obviously we've done a lot of work. In my previous life in the central bank, I was heavily involved in CP86, and in Aquest, we've done a lot of work with Mancos across a range of things CP86 related, whether it is sort of testing how good they look versus CB86 and their peers, or if they're getting ready for an inspection, to manage that process, prepare and make sure they're ready for a really serious and profitable engagement with the central bank, that they get the best outcome that they can, and that the central bank does too. So we've done a lot of work about that. And now as we get to we're July, so we're into the second half of 2020, and the regulators flagged that their Dear CEO letter, which is going to be the outcome of the CB86 thematic review, is on the way. Again and again, I get asked about, well, what do you think is going to be in the letter? What do you think the regulator is going to come down on? Where are they going to land on substance and all that kind of stuff? So, not that I had tons of time in my hand, but I did pen a mock Dear CEO letter where I just kind of set out what I thought the regulator is going to do when it comes to...
In 6 pages?
Only 6 pages.
Only 6 pages?
Yeah, that was small print, small font. I think the real deal will be longer, I think the regulator's done such an amount of work. I think that they have more to say on strong and weak practices, I think is how they call them, positive and weak practices, than I put in my mock letter. But I think the key points will be covering the same areas.
Right, and you're sharing that CP86 letter with the world?
Yeah, why not?
Next week?
Why not? Put my head on the block. It's going to come out next week, yeah.
No, fair play to you. I know you were somewhat uncomfortable writing it, just given the tone and the substance in the letter.
Yeah, do you know what? I felt a bit like the Grinch who stole Christmas.
Yeah.
Writing it, because I know that I think anybody close to it knows that substance is going to be addressed in the Dear CEO letter or in the outcome of the CB86 inspection. And I think anybody who's following this at all knows that for ManCos, particularly those authorized before July 2017, before the ESMA opinions on Brexit and the 3 FTE position, they know that they're going to need to put in more substance. There's a lot of hope, I think, in the industry that there'll be a fairly substantial transition period to allow management companies, including self-managed investment companies, self-managed funds, to get those resources up to speed. As I said, personally, I don't think there will be a long transition period. So I do feel a bit like the Grinch, because in my mock letter, I'm not given a long time.
Well, I think you're, by, what am I trying to say? I guess I'm trying to say I want to applaud you for that, because that's demonstrative and evidence of how much you're prepared to put your head above the parapet in order to deliver a very authentic and clear message to the industry, with the intention, I imagine, that they're not really going to be that surprised. And it'd be nice for them to have a reference piece that they can look at and mentally prepare for that letter that is coming, and maybe be a little bit proactive, if only to have conversations with the board at the moment in preparation for that letter. So fair play to you for
well, I think
doing what's right and not just what is easy.
I think sometimes you just got to tell people what they don't necessarily want to hear. And
always you have to do that.
And in this, I think there's not going to be a long period. And I think, look, and it helps to hear that now, because either there's not going to be a long period and you've got some time to get your head around it and get mentally prepared, or there is a bit of a longer period, in which case applaud the industry association, because they've managed to negotiate a longer period than I think they would otherwise have received. So if that's the case, then fair play to them. But even if there is a long transition period, don't be fooled by it, right? So imagine the regulator says, I'm going to put you into streams, and I'm going to give you 6 months, and I'm going to give you 12 months, and I'm going to give you 18 months to get your resources in place, right? You talk to any organization and say, what are your values? What is it that makes your business good? It's the people. People,
yeah.
Yeah, people. Oh, it's all about people. If you're in that group and you've got 18 months to get your substance in place, to hire, who do you think is left for you to hire after the group 1 has gone in 6 months and group 2 has gone in 12 months? Who's left is the people that nobody else wanted, or else you're getting your checkbook out.
If I was to speak to the employees or the potential candidates in month 12 to 18, I'd be telling them to negotiate an even better price packet. Absolutely, I would.
So,
because they're going to be in a position of leverage. So it's me, a candidate market, not necessarily a hiring market. No, that's fair play as well.
I think, we chatted about it a little bit earlier when it comes to things like change and using RegTech solutions in that. Gun to the head is a very effective way to get action. This is one where you don't want to be last to move because you're going to find that there's nothing left for you, and you've got no option but to maybe use a third-party ManCo where that wouldn't have been your preferred solution. There's nothing wrong with them, but if you prefer a different solution, you can't
decisions made from a state of emotion are rarely good for business. And whilst pain is a really interesting motivator, to be acting from a place of gun to head, I have to do this because the CBI or some industry body has told me I have to do this. Rarely will you make strategic, sustainable, profitable decisions for your business inside that mindset.
No, you will make a decision that gets you through this period of pain.
Yeah.
It'll probably cost you.
Of course it will cost you.
And it is less likely you'll be able to design something that actually will turn a profit for you and not be a cost.
True. Yeah, true. So there's this, operating from a place of best practice and wanting to be better and evolve and grow, which is, the natural form of most living organisms, is to move towards ever increasing states of betterness. But if you're a firm who wants to operate in a good enough is good enough, well, you will pay you can do it, and you're going to enjoy or live with the consequences.
That's how it works.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
I think we've covered everything on my agenda for this week. That's a lot going on.
We did have a lot going on. Tons of content.
You had Martina Kelly on the podcast. You had the Dear CEO letter for CP86, the mock version. Let me say that again. The mock letter.
Yeah.
You're doing a lot with Sam Glynn over at Code Emotion on cyber for regulated firms. You've got 2 episodes coming out this week or next week.
I think there's 2 out last week, and we're recording another 2 next week.
Monday,
which
actually.
Come out next week.
Wow.
So
your Wirecard and your individual sanctions.
WWRD out now.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And
RegTech for 6-year-olds.
RegTech for 6-year-olds.
God, you've been busy. You've been busy.
Yeah. And
is Daniel going to come back and do any more promotions? And how did Nessie feel about that? How did your wife feel about that?
Well,
does she know?
She does know. She hasn't seen it, so no, she does know. She's cool with it. Daniel though, he's going to be a bit of a diva. He's a bit of a stroppy star. He doesn't want any blue M&Ms in the pack. And he wants his water sparkling from.
God love him. So he's proper cute.
I think we're going to have to work him into like some of the fillers or something like that.
I don't know what it is, but I watched that video that you put out on LinkedIn where he does this little cheeky like wiggle with his eyes and face at the end, and then he's like, like I told you.
Yeah, he's a natural. I'm going to watch that. So Daniel, I think he'll probably have to make a guest appearance. He's certainly the star of the show.
Microphone and all.
Homemade microphone.
Yeah. I love that you felt the need to point that out. Yes, it's a homemade microphone.
I think we will have Daniel back. We're going to record more episodes of RegTech for 6-year-olds next week.
Yeah.
Again, we've got Joanne in, which is terrific. More WWRD. We've had.
You got Brian Walsh from RegTech coming in the week after. Yep. And I think there is a couple of other things, but maybe we'll pick those up on the next podcast.
So how are you feeling in the hot seat, Shannon, as we wrap up episode, your first hosting episode?
I love it. I think I'm wondering how you get everything in a week. But no, it's nice to be on this side of the table. Let's be honest, I'm quite comfortable on this side of the table.
I can see that.
All right, Danny, thank you. I hope you're continuing the birthday celebrations into the weekend. They should be experienced over the 7 days of the birthday week.
I'm lucky if I get 20 minutes, sit down on the day. No, birthday is long gone.
We'll do this again, same time next week. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Shannon.
You've been listening to the Aquest Podcast. For information about our training and advisory programs or our academy, visit aquest.ie. For more resources on regs, funds, and governance, check out our YouTube channel, Daniel Lawlor, RU, RQ.